Brooklyn Independent Television.
Straight ahead on Sector B, the business of Brooklyn.
Waffles!
Red velvet waffles and red tape, risking a new restaurant during a recession in New York City.
We need to breathe, because from payroll taxes, it's really hard for small businesses to stay alive right now.
A Brooklyn entrepreneur wins a contest for best elevator pitch.
Jugglebox is the first company in New York City to rent reusable plastic boxes.
Does this mean it's curtains for the carton? And talk about finding a niche market, making gluten-free baked goods that are more than good enough to eat.
I thought the bread out there in the market was awful.
So gluten-free or not, get with the program.
Hello, I'm Randy Piers. Welcome to Sector B, the business of Brooklyn on Brooklyn Independent Television. People get excited when a new restaurant opens up nearby, especially when they live in an area that doesn't quite feel ready to support a really nice place to eat. On Myrtle Avenue, near the Pratt Institute, as Sector B's Fred Brown tells us, a group of pioneering partners decided the risk, plus all the work, time, and expense that goes into starting a restaurant in New York City, was well worth it.
I get some red pepper flakes, are they up there? Tack. Okay, so for the okra, put some of this in there. Thank you. New ticket.
Welcome to SoCo, a new restaurant on Myrtle Avenue, not Murder Avenue as it used to be known around here. Gentrification has come to this Clinton Hill neighborhood, and in turn has led to more demand for upscale restaurants. Six months ago, SoCo joined the list of new places to eat, a list that, according to the Myrtle Avenue Bid Association, has grown by 25% since 2005. Bid Deputy Director Meredith Phillips Almeida says, a startup like SoCo Restaurant is a noble risk, but necessary to help this community keep thriving, especially along the commercial strip like Myrtle Avenue. They bring something new to this neighborhood while also blending into its previously established identity.
Well, this is our top seller, which is our red velvet waffle with fried chicken.
Top seller?
Top seller, 100 a day, easy.
No.
Yes, way. Yes, way. This is the highest seller right there. Beats every dish. And everyone in the industry has an idea of what it takes. So everyone has a job description. I expect certain things from the waiter because he's expected to do certain things. So if he follows his plan, then there should be no issues. Same thing with the bartender, the busboy, the cooks, also the chef. Everyone has the rule of thumb to follow in the restaurant. Surrounding yourself with good workers. For instance, Richie and I here is the pastry chef. I've worked with him in the past. We worked 8 years before for Marcus Samuelson. So again, knowing when to bring good people in, I think that's really important because you can't do it by yourself. You really cannot do it by yourself. Waffles!
We buy a lot of our products ourselves. We go to the Bronx Seafood Market, the Fulton Seafood Market. I go to the Brooklyn Terminal Market. I spend my day, most of the days, sourcing products. So it starts about 8, 9 a.m. going to the market. We thought it was time, once again, that we can branch out and do something slightly different. We wanted to leave the genre of Caribbean food and play around with something, challenge ourselves. So we found our way here on Myrtle Avenue with SoCo.
The next one is our blackened salmon, plantains, smoked asparagus, and we have the honey mustard sauce.
We had a huge population of potential clients, potential customers, and we really didn't find a restaurant that fit the mold of what we did. But throughout our search, what we realized is that our opportunity might be right here in our backyard. And that's how we landed in Brooklyn.
Landing safely is one thing. Taking off as a new business is another.
We open, but at least we need to breathe, because from payroll tax and all the rest of the taxes, it's really hard for small businesses to stay alive right now.
In the business plan, we projected everything from salaries, electric bill, opening salaries, all of our construction costs. It may not work out that way in the end, but at least if you have that as a guideline, you have something to guide you along.
Well, it's homemade. It's our own barbecue sauce that we make here. It's an Asian fused barbecue sauce, and I'll keep the recipe to myself for now.
There's a lot that goes into a liquor license. It's a little bit of luck. It's a little bit of, it's a whole little formula. You spend a little bit of money to acquire the license. You can't be too close to a school. You have to be a certain distance away from other liquor license operators.
When people on the outside looking in, that's what's my mind. I want to tell them, hey, come over here and enjoy the food, enjoy the atmosphere.
If we don't make every person that walks through our door happy, we failed at what we've done, and pretty much our investment will go down the drain. Everything has to be right for our guests. From the time they walk in, they want to be greeted. When they come to the bar, the drinks have to be on point. From the time their plate comes out. So it's a combination of all these elements that create the whole experience.
So the doors are open, the drinks are flowing, and the red velvet waffles and fried chicken is a customer favorite. But the rule of thumb is that it's not until you hit the 5-year mark that a business can truly be called a success.
I think it's a boost for the community as well, because it's a different vibe. It's very eclectic, very eccentric, very upbeat, very modern. So it's just a different look for Myrtle Avenue.
The diversity in our clientele is definitely reflective of the neighborhood. That is Brooklyn.
For Sector B, I'm Fred Brown.
Two things we know for sure about 2012. Unemployment will still remain high, and it's an election year. A solid guarantee that the word we'll hear more than any other will be jobs. Finding and keeping good jobs are a priority here in Brooklyn, of course. But which industries and business sectors have weathered the recession, and which hold out the best promise for growth? Here to tell us about recent trends and offer some educated guesses is Lesley Hirsch, Director of the New York City Labor Market Information Service at the CUNY Graduate Center. Lesley, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, Randy. It's a pleasure.
So big picture, are we still in a recession or not?
Well, we're not in a recession according to the National Bureau of Economic Research, but they determine the begin and end of economic cycles based on a lot of other things other than employment. But as far as employment is concerned, employment recoveries typically lag behind national recession recoveries, and lately they've been lagging way longer than they were in the earlier part of the century. So yes and no is the answer. We're still in an employment recession. We're still about 2% below where we were at the beginning of the recession, New York City wide. Some places are, some industries are doing better, some are doing worse.
So New York City wide, where have we seen some positive trends and where have we seen some negative trends?
Well, I think going back to the recession, if you don't mind, we can look at what happened during the recession. During the recession, the typically resilient industries did well. Those are, healthcare and social assistance, meds, also known as meds, educational services, known as ed. So the expression is eds and meds always do well. Those did well. Those were the only ones that did well across the city throughout the recession. This picture was very, very different in Brooklyn, though. In Brooklyn, about half of the industries kept adding jobs. Eds and meds did well, but so did accommodation and food service, retail. The only ones that did really poorly across the board in Brooklyn as well as in New York City, manufacturing, construction, information, and some of those really have to do with long-term secular trends.
So break down sort of Brooklyn jobs for us for a minute, both pre and post recession.
In Brooklyn, you're like a mini-me of New York City. New York City has a heavy concentration of jobs in government, jobs in healthcare, and jobs in retail for that matter. But New York City also has a heavy concentration of jobs in professional services, and as we all know, finance and insurance. Brooklyn has a much stronger reliance on healthcare and social assistance. Fully 1/3 of all jobs in Brooklyn, even more than 1/3, are in healthcare and social assistance. And then you have accommodation, which is hotels and restaurants, and then retail. That makes up about a little bit more than half of all jobs, those three sectors. The rest, information, professional services, finance, all of that, they make up slivers, 5% or less of the labor market in Brooklyn.
So that's a big difference from about a decade or so ago, when manufacturing, for example, was a much higher concentration of employment.
Absolutely. Over the last 50 years, we've lost something like 90% of manufacturing in New York City, and that obviously has really hit hard in Brooklyn, where it was concentrated.
And when you say Brooklyn sort of weathered the recession better than New York City as a whole, is that because we already had a higher concentration of eds and meds,
yes,
so to speak?
Most likely.
Yeah.
Most likely.
As we look, for the next couple of years, where do you see some of the growth trends here in the borough?
Growth trends, this is where we get into the some educated guesses. I think what we're looking at lately is, first of all, you have the Brooklyn Navy Yard, and the Brooklyn Navy Yard is looking at adding some manufacturing, which should shore up, if not actually grow manufacturing in Brooklyn. I think healthcare is expected to grow, maybe not as fast as it has been growing, mainly because of the issues around the new payer system and the new regulations.
So healthcare is could go either way, right?
Right. As we know, there are a lot of hospitals that are on the chopping block, potentially on the chopping block. So we don't really know which way that's going to go. But chances are we're looking at more ambulatory healthcare and more community care settings in Brooklyn.
And what about sort of self-employment? I mean, there's this sense that in Brooklyn we have a concentration of people who are self-employed.
Well, it's true. About 10%, 9% of all people who are working in Brooklyn are self-employed.
So in that sense, those are Brooklyn jobs too, right?
Yes, that's right.
And what about retail, hospitality? We've seen a growth in hotels, growth in restaurants in the borough. What's the trend?
I think that's we can expect more hotels to be built. We saw a huge increase in hotels and restaurants in Brooklyn over the last decade. And I think the plans are, at least economic development plans, appear to be that we're going to just be seeing more and more growth. Brooklyn is outpacing Manhattan, even in its growth rate, even if it may have slightly fewer hotels and restaurants.
So what's the downside?
The downside? Well, the downside is there are a lot of weak parts of our economy, generally speaking, not so much in Brooklyn, well, in Brooklyn and generally across the country. We're really not sure. There's a lot of uncertainty around sovereign debt in Europe. That can have an impact on finance. Finance has an impact on a lot of other industries, like black cars, for example. So to the extent that you've got ground transportation, passenger transportation that's here in Brooklyn, you might see some issues around loss of jobs there. I think, the real issue is what's a moneymaker. What will help you send money or bring money in from outside of Brooklyn instead of just churning the money around from people who live there, which is this
notion of traded clusters, right?
Yes,
yeah.
Right. And I think, economic development could play a big role in increasing, for example, the information technology presence in Brooklyn, which we already see to a great deal in Metro Tech. But that seems to be the one sure shot that everybody knows, is that there's more IT and more IT in every industry. So to the extent that IT serves other industries, it would be a great bet for Brooklyn.
So let's talk about this notion of traded clusters, just because I think it's a helpful one for our audience. A traded cluster is when something is created here, whether it's knowledge-based or whether it's product-based or service-based, that could be exported elsewhere, right? So healthcare isn't necessarily a traded cluster. So even though it's growing and it's a large concentration here in Brooklyn, it doesn't necessarily represent the best economic opportunity. Is that accurate?
Well, that's right. I think you make money when you can actually export to a larger consumer base than you actually have in Brooklyn. And the typical exports are, obviously you used to have manufacturing. Now we have an awful lot of internal services. Hotels might help. Obviously.
So hotels
yeah,
and
Our
restaurant
export,
and
right.
hospitality would be a traded cluster.
Yes,
for
that's
the
right.
borough.
Unfortunately, I think when we're looking at hotels and eds and meds, we also are looking at a lot of, of course you have professionals who make an awful lot of money, like doctors and so on, doctors and surgeons, but it's really largely low income, low wage work. And so home health aides, certified nursing aides, paraprofessionals who are teaching, for example, it's a lot of low wage work. So I think what we're
the restaurant industry and
right.
even retail to some degree gets some criticism in terms of wages. Yes?
Right, absolutely. So there's a little overlap between internally focused sectors and the wages that they offer. So we could be looking at basically raising the floor if we're looking at bringing in other industries that actually could be export industries.
So when I used to do more of this work and sort of tracked it a little bit more carefully when I was at the Brooklyn Chamber, I'd say about 7 or 8 years ago, it seems like Brooklyn's share of the overall sort of employment base in New York City has grown, and that's probably a good thing, right?
Right.
And is that trend going to continue, do we think?
Well, I think Brooklyn, this is outside of my formal position, but Brooklyn, I think, has become a destination in its own right. And, more people are moving here, and not as an alternative to somewhere else in New York City, but because they want to be here. Same thing with businesses, and I don't see any reason why that wouldn't continue into the future.
So we've seen, Brooklyn's residential base grow, but we're also seeing its business sector grow.
Right.
And that's healthy growth on all fronts.
That's right.
Great. Well, that's good news for the future, and we appreciate you shedding some light on this. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
One big job almost all of us have to do at some point, and not one we get paid to do, is moving. Setting up and packing all those cardboard boxes, then taping them shut, and then breaking them down once they're empty. It's something we'd all like to avoid if we could. That's in fact what inspired a new Brooklyn company dedicated to saving us a lot of effort, and not to mention a lot of trees.
We've all had experiences moving in New York City, and it's right up there with speaking at a funeral or some of the most stressful things. And we started this business hoping that even if we could reduce that stress just a little bit, we could make people's lives easier. So we offer a product where we deliver boxes to your door. They're plastic, reusable boxes. You pack and move on your own. And then after you reach your new apartment, we pick up the boxes and take them out of your way when you're done with them. By the time you pack one cardboard box, build it, tape it, and fill it, and then seal it, you can have 4 of our juggle boxes locked and ready to go. You save money because it's cheaper than purchasing cardboard boxes. And then you also save the environment because these boxes can be reused 50 to 100 times and cardboard once or twice. I was helping a friend of mine who had just moved to a new place, and she was complaining about how she moved 4 blocks away in Brooklyn, and she had to purchase these brand new boxes, use them once, build them, take them down. Now she's got to tie them up, and it seems like such a waste. So I thought to myself, there's got to be a better way. Our main product is our box that has attached lids. They're stackable, nestable. We entered a competition called the Perfect Pitch Competition, which is run by Columbia Business School and Crain's New York. We had 90 seconds in an elevator to pitch our business. Jugglebox is the first company in New York City to rent reusable plastic boxes as a smart, fast, and green packing solution. There were a bunch of startups that were competing, and Jugglebox ended up winning the competition. So we received a feature article in Crain's. Everyone you speak to, it's very important that you are on point and you stick to the message. And of course, the most important thing is you believe in what you're doing. Many times you only have 30 seconds to actually talk to someone and explain what you're doing. So if you start a new business, make sure that in 30 seconds you can explain exactly what it does, and anyone can understand it, not just someone who's in that industry. Scott?
Yeah.
Hey, Surinder from Jugglebox. How are you?
Nice to meet you, sir.
What's going on?
Good.
How'd the boxes work out for you?
Phenomenal.
Yeah? All right. For me, the excitement is in starting something new and watching it grow and making it grow rather than sitting behind a desk and watching a screen. Yeah.
I'm telling everybody about it too. So.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's what I want to hear. Our goal is to expand beyond New York, starting with Philadelphia, Boston, and Washington, D.C. And so currently, if you were moving from New York to Philadelphia, you couldn't use us because we need to get the boxes back. But by expanding to other cities, we would be able to facilitate intercity moves. What we liked about the name is that it's unique, it's catchy, and in 2 words, it explains what we do. We're basically juggling boxes all over the city and hopefully all over the nation.
Not so long ago, most of us were only barely familiar with words or concepts like bandwidth, steroids, reality television, and for sure, Twitter. The same can be said of gluten and its partner, gluten-free. But as Sector B's Sherry Carabin tells us, gluten-free is now a growing trend in the world of cakes, pies, and pastries.
Thank you.
At first glance, this may seem like your average bakery, but the products this Brooklyn business creates are not like the ones you'd find on the shelves in most stores or get served in a restaurant. That's because Everybody Eats caters to those with the need or desire to eat breads and pastries that are truly gluten-free.
Gluten is the vegetable protein in wheat, rye, and barley.
Pedro Arroba is co-owner of Everybody Eats.
To make gluten-free products, you need gluten-free ingredients. The main ingredients are gluten-free flours, like rice, tapioca flour, corn, chickpea, faba beans, sorghum flours. There's a lot of grains that you can make flours out of. Gluten-free doughs are very different, very loose, very high in moisture. So the way to handle doughs in gluten-free baking is very different than the techniques you use to make regular breads or regular gluten-baked goods.
Where did you get the idea to open this business?
Well, the idea was an easy idea. I'm a celiac. I have celiac disease.
The condition affects about 1% of healthy Americans, causing those who ingest gluten to have a reaction that damages the lining of the small intestine.
I thought the bread out there in the market was awful, the gluten-free bread. I started experimenting with recipes and tweaking regular gluten recipes, converting these recipes into gluten-free, and we came up with pretty good products.
The bags are up there.
He met his partner, Bruce Bassman, on the internet when the two were exchanging recipes. At the time, Arroba lived in Venezuela.
Pedro was looking for recipes without flour and wheat, and I was just looking for interesting recipes, and I thought something from South America or Venezuelan things would be nice. And he sent me a recipe for a lime cream that you whip up with sweetened condensed milk, very South American. And I sent him a recipe for, I think, my coffee barbecue sauce, which he wasn't interested in the least.
The two became friends, and when Arroba moved to New York, he asked Bassman to help him start a gluten-free bakery.
I didn't want to do it. I said, Pedro, could we please do something else? I don't want to. I've spent my life making delicious food. I've cooked all my life. I come from a catering family. I don't want to start making cardboard now because some people have an allergy. I didn't know much about it then. And he said, Bruce, I'm sure if we work at it, we can make delicious things.
When they started off, they were working out of Bassman's Manhattan apartment.
We were baking 4 baguettes at a time in a regular oven and 2 pizza at a time.
They've moved several times, but about 5 years ago, they started operations here at 294 3rd Avenue in Brooklyn.
Hello.
Hi, how are you? How's everything? All right, how are you?
Do you come here often?
Yeah, about every other week, I suppose, on the weekends.
Do you have an intolerance to gluten?
No, I do not. My wife does. And so either her or I come here about every other week.
Products range from bread, rolls, bagels, pizza shells, and ravioli to cookies and pies. Customers can also order custom-designed cakes.
These are the bagels. And now they're going to the boiling water.
What's your favorite product?
Well, me personally, I like the chocolate chip cookies. They're pretty good. But my wife, I think it's all good for her. I mean, this is why we come here, because there's nowhere else that serves the kind of quality products that she can get here.
Most of their business comes from the East Coast, with about 40% of the products going to health food stores and 20% being sold to restaurants. The rest are private customers. Many have celiac disease themselves or have children that have it, while others are gluten intolerant or simply believe that a gluten-free diet is healthier.
We make a roll, a big roll called panini roll. Is a little larger than the regular roll we make. We sell something like 120 bags of 6 every week.
Still, the operation remains small with just 2 regular employees and additional help being added during busy times. However, the company is growing.
In the last year, we've gotten some of the finest restaurants in Manhattan, and that has increased our visibility greatly. We don't advertise. We haven't found it particularly efficient to advertise. We do go to celiac support groups and vendors fairs on the weekends to meet celiacs and people who have gluten intolerance rather than the general public. And we introduce our goods there, and that's how we build the business.
All right, well, we'll see you in a couple weeks.
This is Sherry Carabin reporting for Sector B.
That's it this month from Sector B. If you want to check out any of the companies or programs we have just featured, their phone numbers and links are about to roll across your screen. To see past episodes of the show, go to our website at brickartsmedia.org/BIT and then click on Sector B. And you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter on BK Independent TV. I'm Randy Piers. Thanks for watching.
Watch this and other Brooklyn Independent Television episodes online at brickartsmedia.org/BIT.